how do you stop a ship without firing a shot? That was the problem facing the U.S. Navy in 1962. Out in the Caribbean, American warships spread across the water. Their job was not to sink anything. Their job was to stop supplies from reaching Cuba, and every mile mattered. On the radar screens, contacts began to appear. Merchant ships were moving across the sea. Some were heading toward Cuba. Some were turning away. Others kept moving forward, straight toward the quarantine line. Inside the command centers, officers watched speed, direction, radio signals, and ship identity. Nobody wanted a fight, but nobody could ignore the risk either, because this was not a normal traffic stop. A single ship could carry equipment, fuel, or cargo that changed the crisis. And if the Navy made the wrong move, a peaceful blockade could become a direct confrontation in minutes. So, how do you force a ship to turn around without turning the ocean into a battlefield? The answer is not just more firepower. It is a layered control system. First, you detect the ship. Then you track it. Then you identify it. Then you move closer. Then you warn it. Then you create a choice. Keep going or turn away. That is what made the Cuban Quarantine so tense. The weapon was not only the guns on deck. The real weapon was control. Control over distance. Control over timing. Control over what the other side could do next. But here is the strange part. The first layer of that control did not begin when a destroyer pulled alongside a ship. It began much earlier, far beyond the horizon. Before the warning. Before the inspection. Before the moment of decision.
So if the cannon was not the main weapon, what actually made a ship turn around?
Oh, how does a ship turn around before anyone fires? It starts with information. A blockade is not just a wall of steel. It is a moving map of the ocean. Every ship becomes a question. Where is it going? What is it carrying? How fast is it moving? Has it changed course? Did it answer the radio? And if it did answer, does the answer make sense? That is why the quarantine line was not one ship. It was a system. Warships created the visible pressure. Patrol aircraft expanded the search area. Radar screens tracked movement across open water. Navigation charts turned empty ocean into controlled lanes. Radio operators listened for replies. Command teams compared every contact against expected routes. Because the real target was not just a vessel. The real target was the supply route behind it. A single freighter might look harmless from a distance, but its cargo, schedule, and destination mattered. If it reached Cuba, it could change the balance. If it turned away, the line worked. And if it ignored every warning, the crisis moved closer. So the Navy had to act before that moment, not at the last second. Not when the ship was already near shore. The process began far beyond the horizon. The first layer was detection. A contact appeared. Then came tracking. Its course was plotted. Then came classification. Its speed, size, route, and behavior were checked. Only after that did the question become serious. Is this ship just passing through? Is it heading directly toward Cuba? Is it carrying ordinary cargo? Or is it part of the supply chain? That is the problem with a maritime crisis. You cannot judge intent from a silhouette. You have to build a picture, one signal at a time. And this is where the ocean became dangerous. Because water gives distance, but distance takes time. A ship can keep moving while commanders are still deciding. It can delay its response. It can change course slightly. It can say one thing and do another. It can look routine until it is not. That is why the first weapon was awareness. Not missiles, not guns, awareness. The Navy needed to know the ship existed. Then it needed to know where it was going. Then it needed to know whether it would obey. Only then could a warship move in without guessing. But this was only the outer layer. Once a contact was identified, the pressure changed. The ship was no longer just a dot. It became a moving decision. And the closer it came to the quarantine line, the less room anyone had to make mistakes. Now imagine that contact moving toward Cuba. Mile after mile, the distance closes. On one side, American warships hold their positions. On the other side, a merchant ship keeps its course. Between them is not just open sea. It is a floating line of control. This line was not a fence. You could not see it in the water. But every ship crossing toward Cuba felt it, because the system was watching. Patrol aircraft could search beyond the horizon. Radar could follow the movement. Radio calls could test the response. And warships could move closer when the contact refused to turn. The sequence mattered. First, detect the ship, then track the ship, then identify the ship, then warn the ship, then close the distance, then prepare to inspect. Each step added pressure. Each step also created a record. The goal was not to rush into confrontation. The goal was to remove confusion, because confusion is deadly in a blockade. If a ship does not answer, why not? If it changes speed, what does that mean? If it turns slightly, is it leaving, or is it trying to buy time? Every small action becomes part of the decision chain. That is why the Navy needed layers. A single destroyer could block one path, but it could not watch the whole sea alone. A patrol aircraft could see farther, but it could not board a ship. Radar could spot movement, but it could not read intentions. Radio could ask questions, but it could not force obedience. Each layer had a weakness. Together, they created control, and the deeper the ship moved, the more serious it became. A distant contact was a tracking problem. A closer contact was a command problem. A ship nearing the line was a crisis problem. At that point, every minute mattered. If the Navy stopped it too early, tensions could rise. If it waited too long, control could slip away. That was the countdown. Not a missile launch clock, not an explosion timer, a decision clock. Each mile reduced the space for diplomacy. Each unanswered call reduced trust. Each steady course raised the pressure. Then the warship could move in, not to open fire, not to destroy the target, but to make the choice impossible to ignore. The ship could keep going, or it could turn away, but it could no longer pretend nothing was happening. That is what made the quarantine line powerful. It forced decisions before weapons had to speak. It turned distance into pressure. It turned tracking into leverage. It turned the ocean into a controlled system. But here is the twist. Even after detection, tracking, warning, and interception, the ship itself was still not the deepest target. The Navy was not only stopping steel on water, it was reaching into something much bigger. So if nothing was destroyed and no shot was fired, what was the blockade really attacking? That is the part most people miss. The ship is only the visible target. It is the steel object on the surface. But behind that ship is a much larger machine. There is a schedule, there is cargo, there is fuel, there is a port, there is a route. There are orders, there are radio calls, there are commanders waiting for answers. So the quarantine was not really attacking the hull. In fact, it was attacking the chain behind the hull. If the ship stopped, the cargo stopped. If the cargo stopped, the schedule broke. If the schedule broke, the plan slowed down. And if the plan slowed down, the crisis changed. That is why this was so powerful. You do not always need to destroy a target. Sometimes you only need to stop it arriving. You do not need to sink the ship. You just need to make the destination unreachable. You do not need to burn the cargo. You just need to keep it from docking. That is the hidden logic of sea control. The ocean looks empty, but in a crisis, it becomes infrastructure. Every route becomes a pressure point. Every port becomes a deadline. Every tanker, freighter, and escort becomes a signal, and every signal has to be read correctly. The first layer was technical. Radar helped build the picture. Patrol aircraft pushed vision farther out. Warships held the control zone. Radio operators tested intent through contact. Together, they made the ocean visible. Not perfectly, but enough to act. The second layer was tactical. A warship created the blocking position. It did not need to fire first. It only needed to get close enough. Close enough to be seen. Close enough to be heard. Close enough to make ignoring it risky. That distance became pressure. Then came the logistics layer. This was the real target. A ship delayed at sea is not harmless. It burns time, it burns fuel, it misses schedules. It creates uncertainty at the port. It forces commanders to rethink the next move. And in a crisis, delay is a weapon. Think about it this way. A supply chain only works if it moves. A ship must depart on time. It must travel on time. It must arrive on time. It must unload on time. Break one link and everything behind it slows. Break enough links and the whole system starts shaking. That is why the quarantine line mattered. It was not just stopping ships. It was reaching backward into the network. It touched the cargo planners. It touched the port schedule. It touched the radio room. It touched every order connected to that voyage. And then came the psychological layer. This might be the most dangerous one, because every captain now had a choice. Keep going and risk confrontation. Slow down and signal hesitation. Turn away and admit the line worked. Every option carried a message. That is how a blockade can work without explosions. It does not smash the target. It traps the target inside a decision. The ship can move, but not freely. It can answer, but not casually. It can turn, but everyone will notice. And it can keep going, but at a cost. This is why the cannon was not the center. The cannon was the final warning. The real system was control. Control over the route. Control over timing. Control over uncertainty. Control over the moment before force becomes unavoidable. And that is the twist. The Navy was not trying to win a gunfight. It was trying to prevent one. By controlling the sea lane, it controlled the choices. By controlling the choices, it controlled the crisis. And by controlling the crisis, it attacked the supply chain itself. But this raises a strange question. Why use so much power for that? Why send warships, patrol aircraft, radar teams, and command centers? Why build a huge naval screen around one simple idea, just to make a ship turn around? At first, it looks like overkill. A warship costs far more than a freighter. A patrol aircraft burns money every hour. A naval operation needs crews, fuel, communications, and planning. All of that just to stop cargo from moving. It sounds excessive. But in a crisis, cost is not the real question. Risk is. The value of the ship is not the point. The cargo is not even the whole point. The real value is time, distance, identification, and control before anyone panics. First, distance buys safety. If you stop a ship far away, there is room. Room to signal, room to verify, room to change course, room to correct mistakes. But if you wait too long, the options shrink. Then every move feels sharper. Second, identification matters. A ship is not just a shape. From far away, it can look ordinary. Its purpose is hidden inside paperwork, cargo, and behavior. That is why one look is not enough. You need tracking. You need contact. You need repeated signals. You need a pattern. Third, the layers manage escalation. A single warning can be ignored. A single ship can be misunderstood. But a sequence is harder to dismiss. Detect, track, call, warn, approach, challenge. Inspect. Each step makes the situation clearer. That clarity is the whole point. The Navy did not want a surprise. It wanted a record of choices. Did the ship answer? Did it slow down? Did it change course? Did it ignore the warnings? Those answers shaped the next move. So the large force was not there to shoot faster. It was there to delay that moment. The moment when a commander must decide. The moment when a captain must choose. The moment when a misunderstanding can turn into action. That is the real reason the operation was complex. Simpler can be faster, but faster can be dangerous. A layered system slows the crisis down. It gives each side more chances to step back. It creates friction before the breaking point. So the expensive part was not the blockade itself. The expensive part was avoiding a mistake. Every radar sweep bought awareness. Every patrol bought distance. Every radio call bought clarity. Every warship bought time. And in 1962, time was priceless. That is what makes the quarantine so unusual. Its strength was not speed. Its strength was restraint. It used force without rushing to violence. It used pressure without losing control. It made the other side decide before weapons decided for them. But that only works if every signal is understood. What if a ship keeps moving? What if it ignores the radio? What if the captain misreads the warning? What if one side sees caution and the other sees defiance? Because at that point, the danger changes. The problem is no longer just a ship. It is interpretation. And in a crisis, a misunderstood signal can be more dangerous than the ship itself. And that is why the quarantine never really ended cleanly. A ship could turn away. The line could hold. The radios could stay calm. But the pressure did not vanish. It stayed inside every radar sweep, every course change, every unanswered call, every decision made at sea. Because a blockade without gunfire is still pressure. Puts warships, merchant ships, patrol aircraft, radios, and command centers into one chain. If one link works, the crisis slows down. If one link fails, the crisis moves forward. That is what made this so tense. The system was designed to avoid a fight, but it also placed both sides close enough to trigger one. A captain might think he is buying time. A warship might read that as refusal. A radio delay might look like defiance. A small turn might look like a test. And suddenly, the question changes. It is no longer, can the Navy stop the ship? It becomes, who decides the next move first?
The captain on the fighter, the commander on the warship, or the people watching from far away.
That is the hidden danger of sea control. It does not destroy the target. It squeezes the choices around it. It slows time. It disrupts supply. Forces every side to reveal intent. And in a crisis, that can be more powerful than firing first. So, the hardest part was not building the line. It was keeping the line from becoming the spark. Because when every side is trying to avoid war, one bad signal can still push everyone closer to it.